My name is David Russell, and on behalf of Westwood Cares, I'd like to welcome everyone to our event tonight. Thank you for coming. I'll be very brief. I just want to give you a little bit of background. Westwood Cares is a group that started many, many years ago in town. Unfortunately, due to attrition of its membership, the group became dormant about 3 years ago. A little less than that, when I was chair of Youth and Family Services Advisory Board, we decided to resurrect Westwood Cares because of concerns that we were hearing from both parents and children about substance use and abuse. Our group now is made up of parents, and we could certainly use more. But we're also lucky enough to have representatives from the town as well. Mike Gillette, the town administrator, is in our group, as is Danielle Sutton, who is the Director of Youth and Family Services. She's currently out on maternity leave, and the interim director, Sarah Cleveland Baruda, has stepped in for her and is doing a wonderful job. We have Sean Bevan and Allison Borges, the two principals, Karen Pareda, who's a school nurse. We have also Chief Silva and Officer Pindell from the police department on our board, Linda Shea, who's the director of the Board of Health here in Westwood, part of our group, and Carol Lewis, who's a school committee member. We also have Carol Reed, who is actually from the town of Needham. She works at the health department, and I believe she's the substance abuse senior program coordinator, if I got that right for a change. And she's been a great asset on our board. So we're lucky to have all these participants. If I left anybody out, I apologize. You're certainly equally as important as anyone I mentioned. And I hope you enjoy the program tonight. I'm going to turn it over to John Loughnane, who's also with our group, to tell you just a quick little bit more about our group, and then we'll get started. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave. I'm John Loughnane. I'm the father of 3 boys in town, and I'm the vice chair, I guess we call it, of the Westwood Youth and Family Services, and I've been involved with Westwood Care since it was rekindled a couple of years ago. Hopefully everybody saw the information up front on the table. There's a nice description, 1-page, 4-paragraph description of Westwood Cares. I really encourage you to pick that up and read it. We spent some time trying to get this on a piece of paper in terms of what Westwood Cares is trying to accomplish. There's also a list of the community members that Dave just mentioned. We'd love to add to this list. It's really been quite impressive how many people from different parts of town have come together to discuss these difficult issues. Just to give you a quick summary of some things that we've done since rekindling the group, we had a speaker last fall, Joni Geltman. She spoke about some parenting issues, and then before that, I think it was about a year ago, we had a woman from Westwood, and I'm blanking on her name, Dave, Amora Kemmerer. Not the more difficult name than mine to say. But she was actually as well. And we do have a Twitter page, or Twitter, however you say that. What do you say? Twitter what? Account? A Twitter handle, that's what we have. It's called @WestwoodCares, and we put out some information about our programs on that. We're also following relevant organizations. So I encourage you, if you tweet or Twitter, check that out. There's some good stuff on that. There's also a Facebook page, and there is a website that's in process that should be out soon. Really thank everybody for coming, and back to Sean to get us to our next phase. Thank you.
Everybody, we're going to get moving right along in a moment, but I do want to applaud, again, all the members, and that's been done, but I want to thank you for coming out. I know June 1st is a tight time for everybody. There's a million games, there's a million other responsibilities, there are a million great TV shows. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you could be doing now, but you're here because this is such an important event to attend and to learn more about. Alice and I were co-reading this book, The Age of Opportunity, which came out last year, and this brain researcher was talking about how teenagers they are at this point in their lives where their brains are developing so fast and in such complex ways in some ways, and also lagging behind in others. And so they're able to do things like complex mathematics, but then simultaneously they lack the self-regulation that we all have as adults. And the analogy he used was that it's like having a Ferrari engine with lousy steering and poor brakes. And that's the way our teens' brains work. And that's something that we all, I think, can sympathize with and think about. And I look at our room full of, I think, sensible cars with their Volvos and station wagons and other things. And today we're hopefully gaining the information that we can help our kids to develop some of that self-regulation and have us be part of that solution. So our first speaker tonight is Marianne LeBlanc. She's a parent and here in Westwood, a parent of some Westwood kids, and also a lawyer. She's going to tell us all about social host liability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bevan. It's a pleasure to be with all of you here tonight. I'd first like to commend all of the folks who are involved with Westwood Cares for the great work that you're doing here in town. Thank you very much for that. I'm the mother of 3 teenagers, so the issues that we're going to talk about tonight are very much on the forefront of my mind as well. So I've been asked to speak to you briefly about the law as it pertains to social host liability, particularly as it pertains to underage drinking, and I mean underage meaning under the age of 21, which is of course the legal drinking age. So social host liability simply refers to the liability of a host who serves alcohol to a guest or guests at no cost, as opposed to a liquor licensee like a restaurant or a bar. So a person can be held both civilly and criminally liable for serving alcohol to young people who are underage. And I'd like to treat those 2 aspects of the law separately, beginning with criminal liability. So the legislature in Massachusetts has enacted a statute which codifies criminal responsibility for social hosts who serve alcohol to minors. It's Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 138, Section 34, which provides that whoever furnishes alcohol to a person under 21 years of age shall be punished by a fine of up to $2,000 or imprisonment for up to a year, or both. The word furnishes in the statute is very important in the context of furnishing alcohol. It is defined as meaning to knowingly or intentionally supply, give, provide to, or allow to possess alcoholic beverages on premises or property owned or controlled by the person charged. So I emphasize the phrase allow to possess in the statute, as that is a very important amendment to the statute, which was made to make clear that a social host has a duty not just to refrain from providing alcohol to minors, but also a duty not to knowingly allow underage drinkers to drink in your home, or in a place that you control. So this covers the situation where the parent has not provided alcohol to kids, but is aware that kids are drinking, that they've brought the alcohol in on their own. You are still liable as a parent for that criminally under the statute. It is not a defense to the statute to have obtained permission from the parents of the kids who are in one's home to drink. It is not a defense to the statute if you collect the car keys of the kids who are drinking in your home. And it is important to note that this statute does not apply just to adults. It applies to minors as well. And minors have been criminally prosecuted under this statute in Massachusetts. And I want to give you just a couple of examples of prosecutions under this statute over the past few years in Massachusetts. In the first instance, there was a 19-year-old boy who was home on college break. Unbeknownst to his parents, he had some of his friends over, also underage, and they were drinking in the home. Mom called to let son know, I'm on my way home. And the kids dispersed. The son told one of his friends, I think you're too drunk to drive home. The friend said, no, I'm going to do it anyway. And then he proceeded to strike a young girl with his car and killed her. The son who hosted the party was criminally charged under the statute that I said to you, and he pled guilty. hoping to get leniency in his sentence. And he was sentenced to a year in jail. Damages in the civil case were in the amount of $8.7 million. In a second example, a mother in Beverly, Massachusetts, hosted a Halloween party for her 16-year-old daughter and her friends, thinking that it would be safer for the kids if they were to drink in her home. One of the teenagers ended up suffering from alcohol poisoning, for which she had to be hospitalized. The mother was then charged under the statute, and she was sentenced to 6 months in jail and 6 months of home confinement, and had to submit to evaluations of her mental health and for substance abuse. Those are just a couple of the many examples of the way in which this statute operates here in Massachusetts. And the takeaway here is that knowingly serving alcohol to young people who are underage, or knowingly allowing people who are underage to drink on property that one owns or controls, is punishable by a criminal conviction with the potential for significant jail time, a significant fine, or both. And note that a person may be prosecuted for such acts regardless of whether there was any injury or personal harm suffered by someone. As I said, both adults and minors can be prosecuted under this statute, and the conviction would obviously create a criminal record, which could therefore later interfere with the ability of a person to get a job or join the military. And this would all be a matter of public record with the social implications associated with that. Now I'd like to turn and talk about social posts in the civil context. Now I'm a trial lawyer. I practice on the civil side of the court, and liquor liability is an area that I practice in, although the cases that we usually bring are in the context of liquor licensees like bars serving underage drinkers. So a brief history is that in 1986, our Supreme Judicial Court, which is the highest court in Massachusetts, first held that a social host can be held liable for injuries caused by an intoxicated guest where a host serves or effectively controls the supply of alcohol that is given to guests. The court has held that a social host has a duty not to serve underage drinkers, and also not to serve a guest whom the host knows or should know is already intoxicated. And if the host breaches that duty, he may be held liable for all of the harm that has been caused by that negligence. Of particular note, social host liability in the civil context is not limited to instances where the social gathering takes place in the home. The touchstone is the control of the alcohol. So putting aside issues for a moment of public drinking, social host liability could apply to, say, a tailgating situation, certainly to a party in a hotel room or a dorm room, or any other type of gathering in which the host is controlling the supply of the alcohol. Also, the harm we're talking about in these cases is not limited just to injuries caused by drunk driving. It extends to any harm caused by an intoxicated guest, including cases where kids have passed out outside and have been injured from exposure. It includes incidents of violence that are fueled by alcohol, alcohol poisoning injuries, the whole gamut of harm that can be done due to alcohol intoxication. So in civil social host cases, suit is usually brought against the intoxicated guest who caused the harm to a third party, and also against the social host. Under our law in Massachusetts, defendants in such cases are held to be jointly and severally liable. That means that the plaintiff who prevails in a case is able to obtain the entire award in a case from one of the defendants, even though there was more than one defendant in the case. So in social host cases, the so-called deep pocket is typically not the underage driver, as the case may be, but the social host, the homeowner. So keeping in mind joint and several liability, one could envision a scenario where a parent may host a social gathering in which alcohol is served to minors, feel assured that no one is leaving in an intoxicated state, but then one of the guests goes to another establishment, has more to drink, becomes intoxicated, and then causes harm to someone. Under that scenario, the first social host could theoretically be brought into a suit with a second social host and be held jointly and severally liable for the harm. So you can see under that operation how careful and considered we have to be in facing these issues anytime there are underage people in our home. So the typical social host liability case is complex litigation, which will take years to resolve. Even if a case doesn't meet the legal requirements it needs to in order to get to a jury trial, that process of figuring out those legal questions alone will sometimes take a couple of years. Any such case filed in Massachusetts is a matter of public record, which is open to the press and anyone else who wants to take a look at those records. Social hosts who are sued will sometimes be defended in those suits by their homeowners insured. But in a situation where a homeowner has committed a crime, such as a violation of the statute we talked about earlier, the homeowner's insurer may well deny coverage in that situation. In such a case, the homeowner will have to personally defend himself, which would cost thousands upon thousands of dollars just in defense costs, and would be personally liable for any judgment in the case against him or her. If we think about the tragic drunk driving scenarios that we are all familiar with, often involving death or very serious injuries, the damages assessed in these cases often are in the millions of dollars. A plaintiff in a social host case can recover for compensatory damages, which includes pain and suffering, medical expenses, loss to earning capacity, and in the case of a wrongful death, can also recover for punitive damages, damages which are meant to punish the defendant. So when we think about the interplay between criminal and civil liability of social hosts who serve alcohol to young people who are underage, social hosts can be held civilly liable but not criminally, criminally liable but not civilly, or both. However, there is no scenario under Massachusetts law where it is permissible to serve alcohol to or knowingly allow alcohol to be possessed by people who are underage, except in the context of one's own children. So, that is a very brief summary of the law in Massachusetts pertaining to social hosts in both the criminal and civil contexts. I believe that the reason we're all here tonight is to try to educate ourselves so as to prevent tragedies which we know are associated with underage drinking, particularly underage drinking and driving. So I think the question becomes for us as a community, what do we do with this information? And if I can put my parent hat on for a moment, I suggest that we share this information about the law and about the very real consequences of supplying alcohol to kids who are underage with our kids. As our teenage kids don't believe much of the factual information we try to impart to them, there's actually a very good handout that I brought with me tonight that is put out by the Department of Education and the Essex DA's office, which is available on the Westwood Cares table, which provides a very good summary of a lot of what we've spoken about tonight. We know that young people, by virtue of their youth, often live in denial that anything bad will ever happen to them or to their friends. But as adults, we know better. And in speaking with a friend last night about this presentation, She said to me, you know, my mom was always the authoritarian and said, you know, no, you can't do this. But it was my dad who explained to me why I couldn't do certain things and what the consequences would be. And that's what really registered for me. And I suspect that most of our kids do not know that they could go to jail if they supply alcohol to their underage friends. They could go to jail for up to a year, like the example I told you about. As parents, we should educate our kids on all of the potential tragic consequences of underage drinking and of serving or allowing people who are underage to consume alcohol in our homes. In so doing, we can serve as good examples as parents and empower our kids to make their own good decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. And next joining us is Kathy Sullivan. Kathy is working in the room. She knows more of you than I do at this point. Kathy became an advocate for the prevention of underage drinking and social host liability after her 17-year-old daughter, Taylor, died because of underage drinking and poor choices. She's going to tell you more about that. Currently, Kathy lives in Plainville with her husband, Chris, and her 2 sons. Welcome, Kathy. If you have a card, we will be collecting cards now for our roundtable discussion after this. We'll send some people around to grab the cards quietly while Kathy speaks, and then we'll use those cards to help inform our discussion in a little bit. So.
Those cards are for those questions you don't want to own. Feel free to throw them on the little index cards you were given. But first of all, I have to tell you, I live in Plainville, so it's a 30-minute ride here. Not bad. I love, you know, easy drives. I drive like an hour and a half, 2 hours. So when I put Westwood in my little GPS, because I don't travel that much out here, I was like, yes, 30 minutes. So it was good. So thank you. But most importantly, Westwood does care, because turn around and look at all your fellow people in your town. A huge amount of people. Sarah, where'd she go? Where did Miss Sarah go? Where'd she go? Oh, so Sarah, oh, there she is. She's so cute. You're adorable. Sarah said, you know, hey, no, we get a lot of people at these things. I'm like, well, good for you, because I have gone to schools where I have sat with 2 people. Yes, at nighttime, and one would be over there, and one would be over here, and I'm like, people, get together. Let's go sit next to me. So you guys have a great town, obviously. So Westwood is obviously doing something fabulous. So keep that up. And join that Westwood Care thing, because you obviously need parents. I sat down there and I listened to you speak. And honestly, I never would have thought I would have known so much about this subject. And honestly, I wish I was sitting home today, guys. Just sitting in my home, waiting for my 3 kids to do what they do all day long. But unfortunately, my world changed. And it changed on October 17th, 2008, when my cute little Tay that you see up there and there, she was a senior. How many of you are seniors right now, right? Raise your hand. Yeah, God bless you. We all need it. I actually have a senior this year. Taylor was a senior in 2008, and I actually had to go to her graduation by myself without her because of stupid, poor choices that she and her friends made that year. But I'm going next Thursday to my son's graduation. Logan, who was 10 when he lost his sister, is graduating from King Philip High School on Thursday, and I will be there with a humongous smile on my face. And I can tell you I got there because I'm a different parent. I parent differently than I did with Logan. than I did with Kayla and my oldest Zachary. And unfortunately, it was a huge price that I paid for those parenting skills. And I lost Taylor in October 2008. And honestly, I didn't know how I was ever going to survive it. But in January, 2 months later, I stood up at my very first school to speak. And how I did it, I have no idea, except to say 17 years, 3 months, and 3 days for that amazing thing up there. Totally impossible if you knew my amazing kid. Literally 2.5 months later, my first school, and I spoke to kids. And you know what, I've been a parent now for 27 years. My oldest is 27. I had when I was 20, I'm not that old. But I've been a parent now for 27 years, but at that time, Taylor was 17 and Logan and Zachary was 19. So So I had been a parent for 19 years. And to come and speak to our kids during the day in a school, by no means was easy 2 months later, but I was a mom. I could tell your kids, please make good choices for yourself. When I had to go to my first parent night, I did it a week later, and it was really, really hard to stand up here as a parent and have to say, my daughter died because of underage drinking, because of my parent skills were one of the reasons. And I learned a high price to consider it a rite of passage. I can tell all of you right here, it's not a rite of passage. My youngest, totally different life. 21's a reason for a reason, and it's for reasons that you were just talking about. So my very first school I went to, I sat up there, and I honestly don't even know what I said, except I was trying to reach out to your kids. And I always bring these pictures with me. I bring my senior photo, because that's my kid, but that's Taylor all dolled up. I'm sure some of you parents, you look at your kids when they leave the house in the morning and you're like, are you kidding me? You don't out like that. All right, that was my girl. Every single day she would go to school with a big pile of hair on her head, big ponytail, she didn't wash for like 3 days, sweatpants, sweatshirt, she didn't care what you looked like. And I'd be like, really, Tay? That's your choice for the day? And she would take off to go to school. I always bring my senior picture, so when I speak at schools during the day, the seniors in the room know she's doing exactly what they did that year. But that's my kid all dolled up. She's got a cute little prissy sweater on. I remember her coming up and down the stairs trying on outfits for her senior photo, and we chose that one. But that's not my kid, because she's all dolled up and looking cute. I bring the real photos to show you my tag, just like your kids. I bring my photos when I go to school, so your kids will see my kid sitting up on my shoulders, putting the angel on the Christmas tree like she did every year. I want your kids to see my Tay hanging out with her 2 brothers. As I told you, Logan was 10 and Zachary was 19. And I want you to see them hanging out with her friends. Because all of our kids, no matter where we live, they're doing the same exact thing. And these photos that you'll see are my real Tay. But this is my cute little thing in a Pawtucket softball. Pawtucket, what did they do? Baseball? Baseball. No, it wasn't Red Sox. She didn't go to the good one. But this is my family today. And I always let you guys know, the first time I had to take a picture with my 2 boys without my Tay, very hard. But I did it. And I always let everybody say, if you see that smile on my face, it's real. I wake up joyous every single day of my life. I wake up so happy. My poor little husband there, who I married in 1 at 1 o'clock, he can't get it because he's got anxiety of being in. He does not wake up joyous. I wake up cheerful and happy every single day. And I always share those pictures with everybody because that's my family today. But on October 18th, I had to make that conscious decision to survive. And each and every one of us, at some point in our lives, will have that day that you gotta decide to keep moving. Because you know what? If you lose someone, they're gonna want you to. They are 100% gonna want you to keep moving and keep smiling, because that's what they would want for us. And I got married on 1/1 at 1 o'clock, and I swear Taylor handpicked him for me, even though she never technically met him. He was at my first parent night. Doesn't have any kids, people. He was there because he was 5 weeks sober. His sponsor had brought him. He used to play for the Patriots. Chris Sullivan, I don't watch football, don't care. I've got a little stupid Super Bowl ring in my house. Everybody thinks that's wicked cool, whatever. But he was there, and I swear she handpicked him for me. And every time I go anywhere, she handpicks one of you guys. No questions asked. She's introduced me to people for the last 7 years, every single day. I know it without a doubt. That is my Tay. Now, when your kids went to school today and they left, you probably have no idea what they did at school, right? We never do. What you did, they tell us, oh, nothing, you know. Those pictures that you'll see in the green shirts are actually from Taylor on the day she went to school on that Friday. It was Spirit Week. You guys have Spirit Week at Westwood, right? Yeah, you're lucky, you're shaking your head, yes. I go to a lot of schools and they're like, no Spirit Week. Like, what? So it was Spirit Week and it was homecoming. And Taylor had gotten together with her friends the night before to make those t-shirts, Pink Polkas, Green and Gold. So I ended up getting all those pictures after Taylor had passed. And as her mom, I'm lucky to have them, because I got to see what she did at school all day. And when I speak, I always mention those photos. You'll notice that shirt says seniors never fall. And it kills me as a mom, because it's actually what she wore to school that day. But I let everybody know when I'm talking, you don't even have to pay attention up here. You can just look at the photos and just, realize that she's just like your kids. That is my daughter's great butt. My daughter had the best butt. I let you kids know when I go to school, you love their butt. That's all there is to it. Great walk. She was adorable. So those are just going to move. If they don't continue to move, please tell me. I spoke at a school 2 weeks ago with Maria Ruggiero, where they left, right? With Maria, and the pictures never rotated. Those people stared at my child's butt the whole time. Like, really, people? Like, you thought that's what I would want you to look at? So then I had to click, click, click. It was obnoxious. So anyways, that's my kid. And you'll probably see a picture in the green shirt of the party that she went to that night. When I go to schools and when I speak to parents night, it's all about education. I am not here to preach to you. I'm not to tell you about your kids' brains. I don't know anything about them. I barely know my own or my kids' brains. But I'm just here to tell you what happened that night. So as parents, we all learn from everything, and everything can be a teachable moment. Same with you kids. It was a Friday morning, as I told you. And I went to school, Taylor went to school in the morning, and I went to work. And I remember her getting ready in the morning. She was actually getting dressed. I'm like, hey, Tate, what's up? And she's like, hey, it's Spirit Week. We're taking lots of pictures for the senior yearbook. And I was like, well, good to see you showered. Thank you, kid. And she went off to school, and I went off to work. And what I did not know was that was actually going to be the last time that I actually got to physically see my Tay. Because she was going to go sleep at her friend's house like she had done 1,000,000 times before. Every time I speak to your kids at school, the first words out of my mouth are this. I always say to them, you know what? I don't want any of you kids to look up here and see Tay's mom. I want them to look up here, and I want them to see you. I want them to see their mom, their dad, their grandparent, their aunt, their uncle, their guardian, whoever it is that truly, truly loves them. And I share with them one wrong choice surrounding drinking, and you guys could be standing up here. And I let them know you probably couldn't do it, because honestly, I don't know how I did. And that instantly makes your kids feel it. I can't even describe it to you guys. But what happened was Taylor went to school, I said goodbye and I love you like I always do. She went to school, I went to work, and Taylor had grown up in Plainville her whole entire life. 17 years, 3 months and 3 days. Taylor was there. I've been there for 47 years. I could be that townie that you talked about. She went to school, and what happened was Taylor decided to ask with her best friend, one of her best friend's older brother, to go buy them the alcohol for the night. And what he did was he ended up meeting up the girls after school, and he ended up meeting the girls after school, and they switched the alcohol, and what he did was he bought the girls 2 big bottles of Bacardi Raz to drink for the night. And they ended up getting that alcohol, and then the first house party that Taylor went to was actually in Bentham. Plainville, I live in Plainville. King Philip High School is a regional school. Some of you probably know it's Plainville, Bentham, and Norfolk. So Taylor's first house party that she went to actually was in Bentham, and you probably just saw the picture of it. She was in the basement. She was with a bunch of girls, and the girls were all playing card games, doing shots. That mom was upstairs in the kitchen, and the girls were playing those card games for a little bit, and I was told that they left there like around 6 o'clock, and they decided to go to the next house party. And the next house party that Taylor went to was actually in Norfolk. And at that house, Taylor was greeted with 3 30-packs of beer sitting up on that counter. And that alcohol had actually been bought by an 18-year-old boy who was a senior. He went to his local store like he had done before, and he bought his friends the beer that they were going to drink that night. I can share with you, while Taylor was at that second house party, she actually called me. She called me because I'm a realtor. I sell houses for a living. And I remember her calling me, and I was downstairs putting laundry in. Logan, my 10-year-old, was having a sleepover. And I remember she called me and she was like, "Hey, Mom, we're taking bets on how much this kid's house is worth. Parents just built it. It's gorgeous. 3-car garage, kitchen's beautiful, granite, the deck, enormous." And I said, "Okay." And I said, I gave her a price. She was like, "Yes, I won the bet." And I was like, "Well, Taylor, of course you won the bet. You've been in the backseat of my car for 15 years selling real estate. You better know your numbers." She hung up the phone, all excited, and she said goodbye and "I love you," like always. Thank God. What I didn't know was her mom. It was going to be the last time that I actually physically spoke with Taylor. Because remember, she was having that sleepover. Now, I was told while Taylor was at that second house party that she spilled a beer. My kid supposedly took off that famous sweatshirt she had on, and she wiped up the floor with it. Then Taylor proceeded to leave that house and go to the football game. It was homecoming night. They got there around halftime, I was told. Taylor was in a pair of jeans and a white tank top in October at a football game. She jumped up on the bleachers. My child was very loud, kind of like her mother, very social. She ended up jumping up on the bleachers, and she sat next to one of her softball friends' moms. Now, this lady had known Taylor since she was 5. She lived down the street from me. And when Taylor sat up to chat with her, she actually looked at Taylor and she said, "Hey, honey, are you driving?" She knew Taylor was drinking. She could tell that she was very drunk. And she asked my Tay if she was driving. When Taylor said no, she said okay, and she let her go because she thought she'd be okay. I have to share with all of you, that poor woman had to come over to my house 2 weeks later and sit down on my couch with me and say that she wished she had called me. She had my number on her phone, and she didn't call. And I had to instantly forgive that woman, because you know what? You don't get those moments back. And she was very, very sorry that she didn't call me. And I always share that with you guys, because you know what? We always don't want to make that phone call sometimes. We don't want to be that parent that might be that tattletale and then have everybody in town talking about it. But I also got to let you know, you want the phone call. But you also, as parents, have to be willing to take the phone call. You have to be willing to say, "Yes, please let me know anything you know, I need to know." And that's very hard for some parents. And I want you to know, standing up here, I welcome that phone call. And I'll share another story with you later about Logan, where that falls into place. So after Tay left the homecoming game, they won, highly unusual for King Philip. They won the game that night, and I always share with you kids where the alcohol came from, because you know what? They'll always have that older sibling. They'll always have that older friend that they might be able to ask. They may be sitting here at home, 18-year-old senior, with a fake ID in his pocket, just like that boy had. And I always share with them, you know what? Those 2 boys that gave Taylor that alcohol that night, they both love Taylor. And they've woken up every single day for the last 7 years, knowing that they bought the alcohol that Taylor drank. And honestly, guys, it kills them. They really wish they could take that back. So I always let your kids know, you know what? You never know when that one decision is going to affect your life forever. So please, rethink it. So Taylor left the football game that night because they won. And where my daughter went to party with her friends was actually into the woods. She ended up going to the Norfolk Airport. It's been abandoned for years. And in order to get to where the campfire was, Taylor actually had to walk about 500 yards, 5 football nets. The first 200 yards she walked was down an old bumpy field. It was blown up to her knees. The next 200 yards Tay took was down an old airport runway. The last 100 yards Tay took with her friends. They actually opened up their cell phone for light. It was in 2008, they didn't have that flashlight app. They opened up their cell phone and they went the next 100 yards through a pathway of trees. She walked up to the pathway of trees, and they lit the campfire that was already going. They lit the campfire and they started drinking some more. They had the leftover beer, I was told. While Taylor was there, my kid had a stupid fight with one of her girlfriends. Girls fight about the stupidest things all the time. It's just what they do. Tay had a stupid fight with one of her best friends, and she got up to leave. And I was told by them that she was stumbling, and that she started to walk away down a different pathway that actually would have led her deeper into the woods. And you know what 22 friends did? They all laughed. They all laughed because they thought it was funny. And they supposedly pointed her back to go back those 500 yards by herself. Guys, Taylor didn't have a car that night. She didn't have a ride. That was the last time that anybody ever physically saw Taylor. I have to share with you her last phone call she made. 10:57 p.m. I had to check her records the next day. It was actually to her best friend, Courtney. She called Courtney, and all Courtney could hear was, airport, airplane. That's all Taylor kept repeating. She could still hear noise in the background. We assume at that time she was still at the party. And Courtney said, Tay, you gotta call me back. I don't understand you. And that was the last phone call my daughter made. When I talk to your kids during the day, I make sure they realize she didn't call me. And I let them know you want the phone call. Do you know, during that talk, I usually say, hey guys, how many of you, raise your hands, would call your parents? Do you know not even half of them raise their hands? We all think our kids know, call me, if you get in trouble, so I'll kill you the next day, whatever, take away your stuff. We think they'll call us, but some of them won't. So have that conversation with your kids. You know what? Whatever you're doing, just call me. I'll be the one to save you. It's important. Taylor and I talked about everything. Like that chick told me stuff that honestly, as a parent, trust me, I didn't want to know, but she was like this, didn't call me. So please have that conversation with your kids. It's huge. Now, remember, Logan, my 10-year-old, having a sleepover. I went to bed at 10 o'clock that night, Friday. Humongous regret for me as a parent. Because you know what? I didn't check up on Taylor that night. She had slept over her friend's house a million times before. I assumed she was okay. Don't ever assume, guys. Make the phone call. I can share with you that I've called every single time for Logan to make sure he arrived where he should have arrived. Now it's Saturday morning and I decide I'm going to paint my dining room walls. Now remember, I'm a single mom at this time. I am not domesticated at all. For some apparent reason, I'm going to go paint my walls bright yellow. All while I'm painting them tan, I'm thinking, Taylor is going to be so proud of me. Look how pretty this is coming out, right? Back and forth to Lowe's, because I'm forgetting stuff. That's what I do. Going back and forth to Lowe's, and I'm noticing Taylor's not home. So now I start calling her. 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11, 12, going straight into voicemail. You guys know our kids never let their phones die. It's just not something they do. Very unusual. 12 o'clock, I start calling up our friends. When I get a hold of Courtney, she told me about the drunk phone call. She said, Ma, I'm really worried. She was really, really drunk. Now, when I finally got a hold of the girl's house that Taylor was supposed to sleep over that night, it was actually 2:30 in the afternoon. And I said, honey, where's Taylor? She said, I don't know, Mom. She didn't sleep here last night, and her car is still in my driveway. That poor girl had been calling Taylor all morning. She knew something was up. But I always let your kids know she didn't call me to see if Taylor was home because she was afraid of getting Taylor in trouble. And I let your kids know if anything's ever off with any of their friends to make those phone calls. Because it could have been hours that we could have been looking for Taylor. Now I go and I pick her up at her house and I pull into her driveway and I see Taylor's car. Now guys, those parents have been home all day never questioned why Taylor's car was still in the driveway. Anything's ever off, make the phone call, please. Now, whenever I'm speaking to kids, I always ask them to picture this. I want them to picture 600 people. Policemen, firemen, rescue workers, helicopters, heat lamps, dogs, and scuba divers, because there's a stupid river that goes through this airport. And I ask them to picture that they're searching for them, because that's what they actually did for Taylor all day Saturday. Now I ask them to picture you pulling into your driveway 11 p.m. on Saturday night, and you have no idea where your kid is, because I had to do that. They did not find Taylor on Saturday. Sunday morning, the search starts again, same thing, all those people. The only thing they find on Sunday of Taylor is her stupid moccasin shoe. Girls wear those shoes at every school I go to. That's the only thing they find on Sunday. I have to go back home. Now remember, it's October, it's freezing. My kid, strongest kid in the world, best sense of direction, the only reason why we got out of Disney the year before. By now, she would have sobered up. She could have had a broken head, broken leg, wouldn't have mattered. She would have dragged herself out of these woods. You can only imagine what's going through my head. Monday morning, the search starts again, and I'm sitting on the ground praying like I've been doing for 3 days. And my brother-in-law is a captain of a local fire department. And Scotty came up to me, and he grabbed me, and he picked me up, and he said, "Kathy, we found her, and she didn't make it." I let you kids know that those are the worst words we will ever hear as parents. They have no idea how much they're loved. When they found my poor Tay, she had actually drowned in 2 feet of water, basically a bathtub. She had crossed a river up to her chest in the freezing cold. She had walked in mud up to her knees. She had no shoes on, she was all alone in the woods, and she was laying over vegetation. And as Tay's mom, I can only pray that she fell asleep. Guys, I let you kids know, Taylor didn't die of anything that wasn't 100% preventable from good choices. She died because of the alcohol in her system. She didn't die of a drunk driver. She didn't die of a brain tumor. She died because her and her friends chose to drink for the night. It is so stupid. You just never think something like that can happen, but it does. I originally asked you kids to picture me as you. Then I turned it on them. And I asked them to picture themselves as one of Taylor's brothers or sisters. And I say to them, how many of your brothers and sisters? And they all raise their hand. We procreate like there is no model in these communities. I'm the youngest of 6, okay? My mother was stupid. Youngest of 6, right? My family members would have given me away to the neighbors in 2.3 seconds, like I would have been sold for $1, right? I let your brothers and sisters know that they have no idea how important they are to their families. You know what my youngest said to me after Taylor passed? Now we think we know our kids. Logan was 10, and I remember him came down one day and he said, "Hey Ma, you know what I miss most about Taylor?" Now mind you, his room and her room was opposite of each other. And I said, "What, Logan, what do you miss?" And I was thinking something fabulous, like just because you do. He looked at me and he said, "Hey Ma, I miss the fact that Taylor was so loud in the morning when she got ready for school. She was my human alarm clock. I didn't even have to set the alarm." And I thought, yeah, you're right, Luke. You know, that's pretty impressive. And you would not believe how many of your kids come up to me and go, "Oh my God, I do that for my brother." You know, like it's amazing how much you affect your family members and you don't know. My oldest, my 19-year-old Zach, Taylor was 17. His friends thought she was a little too cute. He didn't like it at all. They did not get along at all. They had that love-hate brother-sister relationship going, right? My poor 19-year-old and I were at Taylor's funeral, and we were sitting here watching her lay there, and you know what my poor boy had to say to me? He said, "Mom, I've actually spoken more to Taylor in the last week and a half that she's been missing than I've spoken to her in months." And I let you kids know that, because you know what? We never know when that relationship's going to be gone and how important they are. And I'm sure it's built a lot of brother-sister relationships. Then I turn it to your kids and I do this. And I say, you know what? I want you to picture yourself as one of Taylor's 22 friends in the woods with her that night. Picture yourself there with them. And I said, look at your little BFF. You all sit next to your little BFF. And they turn around and they look at their friend. This is the only time when I speak, you hear noise. They start grabbing each other, crying, kissing each other. The guys even like, give me some love. I'm like loving it. And they look at each other and I said, now I want you to picture them not sitting there. You got an empty seat. So that's what Taylor's class had to do their whole senior year. Starting October 22nd, they all went back to school. In 7 periods a day, Taylor's seat sat empty. All because they chose to drink for the night. It is ridiculous. We never think that can happen to our family. I'm living proof, 30 minutes away from you, that it does. And your kids are amazing when I go to schools and speak to them. They write to me about everything. They write to me about drinking. They write to me about drugs. There's so many kids that don't do that. They write to me about suicide. They write to me about self-harm. They write to me about bullying. They write to me and they tell me they didn't realize that they were loved so much. Like that blows my mind away. It just blows my mind away, guys. Every town I go to, there's going to be that spot our kids are drinking at. It may be in houses, it may be outside, and we always think, you know what, we can keep our kids safe. And we can't. I'm living proof of it. And last year, I decided I was going to take pictures of Taylor's spot. Because every October 17th, I go back to the airport. Because I got to remind myself, why do I come here tonight? Why am I not home with my cute little hubby making me dinner? The man is a master chef. I'm so lucky this time around. But why am I not home having a nice warm fuzzy dinner already out of my work clothes and nice and cozy? Because you know what? You guys need to listen, and we all need to co-parent together. And your kids need to know that it's not okay. And this is Taylor's spot. Every town I go to, I will say to kids, ready to party, and they'll instantly say something. There's always that spot in town. That's Taylor's Field, and that's on a nice, most sunny day. The next picture is the airport runway. And where those 2 buildings are is where I sat for the 3 days with the Red Cross and everybody there. The next photo is the pathway of trees. And this is on a nice, bright, sunny day. Our kids are doing it in the pitch dark. The next photo is the campfire. And unfortunately, I have to sit here and share with you that those kids continued to go back. I'm sure some of you remember there were consecutive parties after Taylor, and I'll talk to you about that afterwards. The next picture is the river. I'm standing on a bridge taking this photo, and the writing up there is where they found my tank. She was that close to getting home. Do you know what the detectives told me? They told me they believed that Taylor could see the street light, and she was fighting to get to the street. All alone, just because of the alcohol in her system. The next picture is Google Earth. I stood at the campfire, and I took that picture. The blue dot is where the campfire was. My daughter had to cross all the way past those trees. She had to walk in that mud, that black line that you see is the river, and she was found in that small little box. And Miller Street is where the bridge is. That's how close she got in such a fight. I walked that walk 6 months later with a detective. I put a bodysuit on. I zipped myself up in a life jacket. Feet, hands, everything protected. I was with a detective and my best friend Kelly. We walked from the bridge to where Taylor was found. It was very tough. I then asked Nate if he would take me back the route that Taylor would have had to take in order to get to that spot. And I gotta share with you, it was the toughest walk I ever did in my life. I was literally up to my knees in mud. but I had Nate and Kelly next to me, and it was a nice sunny day. She was doing it in the pitch dark, all because she drank. The next picture is the worst picture in the world. That's me on the ground, collapsed after they told me. That's my older son comforting me when I should be comforting him. It's my sister, my niece, my poor brother-in-law who had to tell me, and my other sister praying over me. And I know without a doubt that prayer is what saved me. I let your kids know this could be them and your family, all because they chose to drink for the night. Totally ridiculous. The next picture is so cool. It's my youngest son, Logan, my oldest on the far left. And I asked your kids if they think that those poor girls in that basement at that first house party ever thought they'd be here a week later. Absolutely not. We never think anything like that can happen, ever. That's my contact information. I have been giving out my email since the very first time I stood up in front of your kids. I used to give out my phone number, and I'd be like, call me if you need a ride. And then I realized that was insane. They need to be calling you. So, got rid of my phone number immediately, right? That's my email address. As I said, your kids write to me about anything. A perfect stranger. They meet for half an hour. They write to me about everything, and I'm going to share a couple of emails with you. And the first email, and I'm blind as a bat now that I'm 47, thank you, glasses are going on. This first email is from a girl, and she writes, today you visited my school, and I think I speak for everyone that was in the room when I say you left me speechless. I want to begin and say thank you for your great courage and honesty when speaking to my friends and me, because in those words, you changed my way of thinking. When you introduced Taylor, I was staring at a picture of a beautiful and happy student, much like me and my friends. However, when you asked us to begin to picture ourselves as this beautiful girl, I immediately got chills. I pictured my mom standing in the place you were at. A beautiful woman, much like yourself. I was then overwhelmed with tears. Seeing those pictures of Taylor and thinking about her story you shared, how could something so unthinkable happen? How could one bad night decide the fate of a young girl only a year or so older than myself? I am the youngest in my family, and family is the most important thing to me in the world. Everything I do, I hope to be able to dedicate to them someday as well as my mother. My mother and I tell each other everything, and we rely on each other for everything. Her strength and her wisdom never ceases to make me into a stronger person, as I'm sure yours influenced Tay's. Trying to put myself in Tay's shoes, I don't think I could muster the courage to ever call my mother in the same state as Tay. When you described Tay as a fighter, a strong girl who could pull herself through anything, I could begin to relate. However, after experiencing only a narrative of Taylor's horrible night and seeing the true effect of your loss, I know in my heart that making that one call will never just be an option. It will always be the answer. I am so honored to have heard her story, and it truly has shaped my life forever. The ever-present love between you and Tay is one that will live on forever, as well as changing lives. Speaking for myself, the love between you two will inspire and affect my life for years to come. Thank you, Mrs. Meyer, for teaching me a lesson no one in the world has ever taught. The true, unbreakable love between a parent and a child, and how fragile it can be. Guys, we always think that they're going to call us, and you just got to make sure they do. This is my best email afterwards, and I can always share this at every school I go to. It's from a mom, and she found me on Facebook. And I have to share with you guys, when Taylor was alive, I didn't have a Facebook page. When she was 14, MySpace, remember MySpace, people? They were old, yeah, MySpace. MySpace was huge. Taylor asked when she was 14 if she could have a MySpace. And I was like, well, of course you can have a MySpace, Tay. I'm going to get a MySpace. I'm going to befriend you. I'm going to befriend your friends. And I'm going to watch your ever-loving move. Right? Move. Whatever you're going to do there. But you know what I was really afraid of about MySpace? I was afraid of a pedophile coming to get my cute little thing. I was not afraid of what my daughter could be doing online. Do you know what my daughter's Facebook status the night was on homecoming? Homecoming. Getting shattered. As her mom, I should have seen that. But I didn't have a Facebook account. So please, be on social media, be aware of what your kids are doing, because you never ever know what's out there. Huge regret for me. This is the best email ever, and it's from a mom, and she wrote, I don't even know how to begin my message to you. On November 15th, my 15-year-old son James was rushed to the hospital, passed out on the side of the road with a blood alcohol level of .308. The kids gasped at that number, but they honestly don't understand what alcohol poisoning is. They don't understand if they were drinking what Taylor drank that night, they'd be there in seconds. They don't get it. It says 20 minutes later, I was at the side of his hospital bed when his lungs began to fail. They put a tube down his throat. They attached my son to a respirator where he remained in ICU for the next 20 hours. I thank you and Taylor for helping my son. James's friends were unable to keep him walking and moving. They panicked when they were kicked out of a party and James was lying on the road. But two of his friends, they stayed with James. And they took his cell phone out and they called me. And they told me that later that night, they stayed with my son because they remembered what you said when you spoke at their high school. To never leave your friend behind, to always have each other's back. I know if it weren't for Taylor's story and how she reached these 15-year-old boys, I have no doubt my son would be dead. The boys were going to leave him for fear of getting in trouble with the police, but your story was in their heads. I want to thank you. I thought I was losing my son a few times that night, and I am beyond grateful that he is here because of your daughter. I 100% know that kid's alive today because of my today. And you know what? This isn't about Taylor, it's not about me. It's about letting you guys know that it's about your kids and your kids knowing how important they are. Like I told you, they don't understand how their actions affect everybody. And I swear she handpicks somebody every single time, like I told you. And quick story for you, because I know I'm limited on my time here, I'm chatting too much. So Logan, right? Well, I'm going to tell you how the handpicking works. As I told you, I'm a huge hugger, so at the end, feel free to come down and hug me. But every time I go to school, you know how you said I was working the room? I'm a chatter. I don't know if you noticed that. But every time I go to school, I'm up there in the front. And I reach out to your kids when they come into schools. And I'm always like, oh, I always talk about the bun chicks because I love girls with buns. And every time a girl comes in with a bun, I'm like, oh, nice bun. I always do this so they don't think I'm saying bum because that could be awkward. All right, I say, nice bun, and they're like, oh, thank you. And then long-haired boys, I love long-haired boys. I don't know why, I just always love long-haired boys. And then girls in pink, Taylor's favorite color, moccasins, whatever it is, I try to reach out with them before they come in the room. And they think I'm like this crazy substitute teacher because they have no idea I'm the speaker for the night, right? So then I come down and I talk and they're like, oh, it's her, right? So I'm like, you know what, guys? I just want to be able to connect with you before you come. Well, I went to Millis High School and I'm being recorded, so I got to be nice. I went to a strange high school. But I went to Millis High School. And what I did not know about Millis High School, because we're GPS people, was that Millis High School is here and Norfolk, my horrible town in the world, is right next door. Didn't know that. GPS sent me right by the airport, right by the field, right by the stupid river. I had to drive by my worst nightmare to get to this school. I got to that school and it was a disaster. I barely could talk. And I thought to myself, how am I going to do this? I got to this auditorium, I put my stuff up, got it ready, and I ran out of that auditorium. There was a boy there, Cameron, a tall kid. I had to go to the bathroom, I needed to find the bathroom, and I'm like, where's the bathroom? And this kid goes, oh, I'll take you. So I said, hi, I'm Kathy, and he said, hi, I'm Cameron. And he brought me to the ladies' room. I go in there, blow my nose, wash my face, say, come on, get your stuff together, Kathy, you can do this. And I walk back into the auditorium. Millis has a very small school. It's very old. Very old, right? Small section here, very small. The kids came in and they were already sitting down. I did not connect with a single solitary kid that day, not one, not one. As I'm walking in, there's this girl, there's always the late chick, blonde curly hair, prancing in with a Dunkin' Donut cup. And I look at her, I go, Dunkin' Donuts, I love Dunkin' Donuts. Dottie and I drink it all the time. She said, yeah, I don't know what it was, but I really needed this today. And she goes, but I'm hiding it. And I used to bring Taylor's eulogy with me. I used to make the schools print them. It's up there if you want to read it. She had the eulogy, and she's like, I'm hiding it because they don't let me bring it in here. And I was like, go sit down. So she sits down. And as I told you, I'm a huge hugger. A couple of times into me speaking, kids would always come down, and they'd come down and share their story with me. At that line, there were some kids. Now, I want you to remember, small school, principal was here, school resource officer, everybody's like quite real close. And these kids come down, and there's this girl, and she is hysterically crying. She has boogies running down her face, mascara. Don't know where her mother was, way too much mascara for the day. Mascara went down, she was horrendous. Her friend was holding her, and I'm like, honey, what's the matter? She goes, no, you don't understand. My mom could never take this. And I'm like, honey, you okay? You're here, you're not gonna do it, you're gonna make good choices, you're gonna be okay. She goes, no. I was at a party last week. The police came, we all ran into the woods. I was so drunk, I was all alone, that could have been me. And I said, honey, it's not you, listen, Taylor's in your heart now, you're gonna make better choices. Do you know it was the Dunkin' Donut chick? The only chick I spoke to that whole school. Behind her, boy walked up to me. I'm really sorry, that was my house. I put all my friends in danger. And it was Cameron, the kid who brought me to the bathroom. No word of a lie. You know what? Things happen for a reason. And you never like to think that something like this can happen for a reason. But she's out there changing lives. And our kids, they don't always make the best choices. They just don't. Logan, my senior now, when he was a 7th grader, and how many of you have 7th graders, middle schoolers, right? You think, oh, they're babies. They can't be doing anything, right? Nothing. They're angels, right? 7th grade, Logan comes home. King Philip is a regional school, as I told you. Taylor passed away when he was in the 5th grade. So in the 5th and 6th grade, Logan was very protected. Everybody knew Taylor was his sister. They all took very good care of him. 7th grade, Logan goes up to King Philip Middle School, and he came home one day, and he's like, hey, Ma, you're not going to believe what happened today. And I'm like, what, Logan? He goes, well, my new friend came up to me during school and said, hey, you want to go over to so-and-so's house? We're going to go drink, and his parents aren't going to be home. And do you know what my little 7th grader said? He looked at this boy and he said, well, obviously, you have no idea who I am. And I was like, yes! Right? I said, what'd you say, Logan? He goes, I told them that I was Taylor Maya's brother, and I was going to make better choices because her. So I was like, yay, but the way he's so smart, right? Now he's a stupid freshman 2 years later, and I'm at an open house, remember fellow realtor? At an open house, one of my friends calls me, because remember, I'm all about accountability, making good choices, we all make mistakes, let's learn from them. I'm at an open house now, and my girlfriend calls me. She goes, hey, can we talk? I said, yeah, I'm at an open house. She goes, I want to talk to you in person. I'm like, well, I'm at an open house, you can't leave me hanging for 2 hours now. So she said, well, Logan went over to Pat's house this weekend, and I was like, yeah. She goes, well, Pat's mom just called me. She didn't want to talk to you yourself, so she asked me to call. I'm like, okay, what's up? She goes, well, Pat's mom found pot in Pat's trash, and Logan was with him. And I'm like, yeah, one would assume guilty by association. Yes, I'll have the conversation, right? So now Logan comes home. Now I want you guys to fast forward 30 days. 30 days before this, my niece is my age. She was the one up in the picture. She's got kids Logan's age. So I'm very friendly with my niece. And 30 days before this, Derry said to me, hey, Kathy, I want to keep an eye on Logan. He's wearing a lot of the Axe. You know the deodorant spray? Right? I said, well, what does that mean? And he said, he could be smoking pot. I'm like, oh my God, my baby? No. But he came home, I had a conversation with him. I said, hey, Logan, Derry thinks you're smoking pot. Are you smoking pot? And he said, oh God, no. And I went, no, ha ha, hee hee, we all laughed, right? 30 days later, I'm now in this car with my son because now we're having a conversation. I've been divorced since he basically came out of the womb, and he's over at his dad's house for the weekend. I get the phone call saying he's been at Pat's house for the weekend. I call Logan up and I said, hey Logan, when are you coming home? He said, oh, probably 6 o'clock. And I said, you know what, I'm going to pick you up early. He said, okay. So I'm picking you all up cell phones. He's going to figure it out. You know, he's going to know why I'm picking him up. So I go and I pick him up from his dad's house. I get him in the car with me. And I said, hey, Logan, I want to have a conversation with you. He's like, yeah, what? And I said, do you remember 30 days ago when I asked you if you were smoking pot? And he said, yes. And I said, do you remember what you answered? And he goes, yes. And I said, well, I'm going to ask you the same question. And I want you to remember that honesty is the best policy. And I said, Logan, are you smoking pot? And he looked at me and he said, yes. So I said, Logan, why didn't you tell me this 30 days ago? And he said, because I knew we'd have to have this conversation. And I said, yeah, you're right, we're having this conversation, kid. And I said, Logan, why didn't you tell me? You know, what are you thinking? And you know what he said to me? He said, Mom, I promise you, I will never drink till I'm at least 21. The thought of it makes me sick to my stomach because of daylight. And I said, Logan, what don't you get? Being drunk or being high? Same thing, you can't take care of yourself. And he said, no, Mom. He goes, you know, I don't smoke that much pot. Some of my friends do, but I'll never get that high. And I said, really, Luke, how you gonna know? And he said, my friends will tell me. And I said, really, they'll tell you? And he said, yeah. And I said, Luke, did Taylor's friends tell her she was drinking too much? And he shut up. And I said, no, Luke, the words never came out of my mouth. You basically live in a sober house, but I thought you would have known that. You were not allowed to smoke pot. And he said, I'm really sorry. And then I asked him if I was going to find anything in his room. And he was truthful. He told me what I was going to find. I had already found it. It was this beautiful bong. The kid looked like a professional smoker, right? Hid in those beats, you know the beats? Boom, 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 you know those cases? It was in his beats next to his house and next to his bed. And I was like, well, I already found it. So then I proceeded to drive home. And I want you all to picture this being my street. I'm in the car and we're driving by my street. Do-do-do-do-do. And Logan's like this. Oh, where are we going? And I pulled into my local police department, right into the driveway. And I said, Logan, I already found your drug paraphernalia. It's in my glove compartment. Feel free to go bring it in to Officer Rocket, your school resource officer. He's waiting for you. And he looked at me and he's like, oh my God, I don't want to do that. And I said, you know what, Logan? I don't want you smoking pot. And until we're accountable for our actions, we don't change them. And he went in and he spoke to Officer Rocket for 3 hours. Yes, I'm a townie. 3 hours. And you know what he told him? He said, you know what? Your mom just made your high school career really easy because she's going to drug test you. You're not going to want to drink because of your sister. So she just made your high school peer pressures go away. And I just let the kids know, after they've met Taylor's mom, they have that. And it's not always easy. It's not easy for our kids. But you know what? We have to make them learn and be accountable. Like you said, you educate your kids. You have those conversations. I've had those conversations for years. I had a real hard time after Taylor passed away. I started going to schools like this and talking, and I didn't see much change. And I did file a civil suit, like she talked about, afterwards, because nothing was changing. I don't know if any of you remember, because you guys are pretty close. After Taylor passed away, there was consecutive parties, party after party after party. That 5th party, I couldn't take it anymore. I had bracelets for my daughter. I went to that courthouse, and I asked all the kids that came in for their bracelet back. And I asked them to give it to me, because they were not honoring my daughter in the right way. And guys, they took them right off and they handed them to me. They knew what they had done. But do you know, as I sat in that courtroom and all the parents were with their kids, do you know that not one single parent came up to me to talk to me and said, how are we going to do this? How are we going to stop them from doing this? Because you know what, I'm your worst nightmare. I got it, but not one single parent came up to me to say, what are we going to do? And do you know what I would have done to be able to have Taylor be accountable that day? The day that all the kids from that party got their accountability. They had 8 hours of community service, a $50 fine, and they had to do 8 hours of a brain at risk program for being at that party that night. While we were in that courtroom, the media was there. And I remember looking around the courtroom and I was so upset because all of the kids were hiding their faces to not be seen in the media with their papers they had to sign. And the worst part was, the parents were next to them doing the same thing. And as a mom, very hard to swallow. Because I would have done anything to be sitting there with Taylor, to be able to make her pay, to be accountable for her actions, and learn from that teachable moment. The community didn't get it. I filed that civil suit. It was very hard for me to do because I loved most of those people involved. And it took years, but they settled. And I can share with you, they settled for a figure of $850,000. So if you think those cases aren't real, they are. And honestly, guys, you know what I would do to have Taylor to be a 25-year-old that learned from that moment? All that money would be gone in a second. It doesn't bring you happiness. It doesn't bring your kid back. But it does help your kids realize the liability, your parents to realize the liability of it. Because you know what? We have really smart kids, but they make poor choices. As I told you at the beginning of this conversation, I was one of those parents that thought it was the rite of passage. I paid hugely for it. Logan does not have any concept of rite of passage. He knows 21 is the acceptable age for me, for him to be drinking. And he knows that because his mom believes it wholeheartedly. They have that age for a reason. There is no safe way for our kids to drink. So please, everyone, learn. Look at me. Look at Tay. Look at your own kids. And know that they only know what we show them. So please learn from everything today, and I hope that everybody is honest with your questions. I have an open book here, if you haven't noticed. Feel free to ask me anything. Do you know where I get the best questions from? I go to schools with kids with special needs. And do you know what one of their questions was? Because I always shared stories about, Mom could have called, this one have called. Do you know what one of those kids asked me? They said to me, what do you wish you could do differently? What do you hold yourself accountable for? And it was great because it made me realize that the other kids in the schools and the high schools were thinking the same thing. So I share everything I always have as an open book. And if you want to ask me anything, please do not hesitate to ask me. You don't have to put them on a cute little, stupid little piece of paper. Great idea, I'm sorry. Go ahead and ask me anything. So I know the panel's coming up, I've way over talked, but I hope you guys learned something and take it with you and know that I'm okay, she's okay, and you guys are gonna be okay. So make good choices. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. At this point, we're going to bring up some panel members. I know we're going a little bit long, so if you do have another, reason to move along, we will be fielding people's questions and looking at the questions that came in and any ones that emerged from the crowd here. So give us a moment to get settled in, and we'll get started. So if maybe we can go down, I'll pass the microphone down if you can introduce yourself, and then we'll just get right into it.
Hi guys, my name is Sarah Baroud. I'm the interim director at Westwood Youth and Family Services, in for Danielle Sutton, who's on maternity leave, and I'm regularly a youth counselor there.
Good evening, Allison Borchers, the middle school principal. Mary Ann again.
Sean again.
Jeff Solon, the police chief.
And you know who I am.
So I think, Dave, do you guys have questions in front of you there? You collected the cards, maybe you can ask the most prominent ones.
Yeah, bear with us. Oh, we have a second round. So I'm not sure who's best to answer this. I'll let you folks duke it out, but the first question that we want to address is, how do you suggest handling a circumstance where you see drinking or drug use on social media? Who do you call and how do you handle it?
So I'll start off, and I think if anybody else wants to jump in, it's great. I think people are sometimes reluctant to share things with other parents or with the school or anybody on social media because you have the sense that you're seeing something you're not supposed to have seen. So often if you're accessing things that your kids are doing and you're worried about blowing your cover, I think that the most helpful thing to do is just to reach out directly to the people involved. We've seen some of that's happened around issues related to mental health at the school, and sometimes we've had parents contact us when they don't know other parents, just to say, hey, I don't know all these people, can you reach out? And the schools can be a resource, even family services can be a resource, just to connect people with other people so that folks aren't in the dark about what's going on. I think the big message and the takeaway of tonight is you got to tell somebody. Don't worry about being hysterical or being perceived as overly reactive. If you tell somebody, there's a chance we're going to be able to help somebody.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I will say, having had those conversations with kids, I think the kids' response might be some bizarre version that we might not understand, that they look at social media as their playground, and even if they're publicly saying what they're doing, they will observe you as watching that, even if it's public, as being some intrusion, which is very strange to me, but that's the experience we've had where they say, why are you looking at my stuff? That's totally public, and so that might be a response you might get, but I think it's totally healthy for you to monitor as needed when you can in a way that's healthy.
Thank you. And I'll speak without the microphone because of the feedback. Another question that came in is, what do you do when a child shows up at your house and are under the influence of drugs or alcohol?
Call the parents. You did that. It's interesting because you should just call the parent up and say, hey, you know what, little Johnny's here, he's not looking that great, can you come and get him? Because you know what, you don't own it. And Taylor's story that I told you about with the mom at the bleachers who had to come sit at my house, I've been on a panel before with someone whose friend had called her. And her friend had actually called her to say, hey, listen, I think Nick's doing some drugs, I've heard some rumors, we think he's using OxyContin. And they were able to get him help. And I remember someone looked at me and said, you know what, which parent would you rather be? Would you rather be the parent sitting on my couch? Or would you rather be the parent that made the phone call before something happened? And that's a no-brainer, so don't think that you can't just reach out, because once you have that child in your house, you own it, and if you're gonna take on that responsibility, it's huge, and it's not something you wanna own. It's my own personal opinion.
Okay, Chief, if I can ask you, I know that you and your department work very hard to keep our kids safe. It's not an easy task. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing on that front on a day-to-day basis? And then also, are there any programs you're aware of or would recommend that if there are parents who are here whose kids are into things that they shouldn't be, and this question, quote unquote, is, are there any scared straight programs that you're aware of?
So that's an excellent question. I'm going to do the best I can to answer it. The pollen count that we all know is exceedingly high right now has attacked my voice, so I apologize for the somewhat less than polygrammatic presentation I prefer to give you. But the first thing that we do at the police department to try and co-parent with you, because most of us in the police department are all parents, is something that you read about in the police journals in a lot of different areas called target hardening. It sounds very serious, right? What does that mean? It means we go in and have face-to-face interactions with the kids in town at every opportunity we can, whether it's myself personally, those of you that may have younger sons or daughters in the elementary schools in particular, you may hear, hey, the chief was in school today, he had lunch with us, or the chief was at the extended day program, he was playing basketball with us. For the record, it's 1-to-1. They were ahead last year, they beat me, I tied it up this year. That's some of the things we do with the younger students. We also have a school resource officer. Many of you may have seen him when you came in, Officer Brad Bendel, or you know him while he's focuses, yes, I see him in the back of the room, thank you. While he focuses at the high school level, he goes into all the schools, and whether it's speaking to students in actual programs like the DARE program. DARE has largely gone, that's a drug abuse resistance education program. And while DARE nationwide received some bad publicity because there was some data that said, look, it's not doing a very good job teaching kids not to use drugs. What they did is they threw the baby out with the bathwater because it was doing a very good job getting police officers out from behind the windows of police cars and humanizing the fact that police officers are parents, that police officers are there to help you, that police officers are people you can have conversations with to break down those barriers. Again, target hardening. Our kids are the targets and we're trying to harden them from peer pressure. And we're trying to harden them from the influences of their friends and bad choices that they're making. That's another thing that we do in town. Naturally, we also do enforcement when we get called, but I'll be the first one to tell you that in some cases, and in many cases, the calls that we respond to are much better handled in the family room than the courtroom. But that being said, they need to be handled. And like most encounters that you have with the police, they're often dictated by the people that you deal with. So if you deal with someone who's in denial, or you deal with someone who's recalcitrant, or you deal with someone who you've tried to help many times before, and they just don't want to take that help, then sometimes those conversations that we'd much rather have in one venue have to take place in another venue. So we try to be proactive, we try to be progressive, we try to be in the schools as much as possible, whether it's through a traditional program like a school resource officer or a non-traditional program like the officers, like myself, stopping and going into the schools so that we have a force multiplier. We try to do enforcement. We try to take a multifaceted approach to being involved with all of our kids here in town's life. In terms of programs or places where we recommend that they go, I think youth and family services is a great place to go. That's always a starting point for us. Certainly, while police work is much more social work oriented than it ever was, much more so when I started my career, and when many of us started our careers, people at Youth and Family Services are very well postured, not only educationally and training-wise, but the networks that they're involved in. And while we sit on groups like Westwood Cares, while we've started initiatives here in town called the Community Crisis Intervention Team that deals not only with mental health issues, people with bona fide mental health diagnoses, but people who are acting in a way because of drug or alcohol usage that is off. They're making bad decisions. So they have behavioral mental health issues that's temporary as a result of that alcohol and drug use. While we have many partners at the table, I would say to the point of the question that says, where we refer you to, we refer you to something like that. Is there a Scared Straight program in Westwood? No, there's no Scared Straight program in Westwood, though we make the station available to anybody at any time to come in to talk with our officers. Yes, we've had conversations with kids that start to go down the wrong path, and sometimes parents have asked us, can you speak to my son and daughter? They just won't listen to me. And while we're happy to do that, I have to tell you, that's really, that's something that we'll do, but not in a Scared Straight fashion. I don't think whether it's a small child who the parents say, be a good boy or girl, the police officer's gonna take you away. Wrong message. Every time I hear that, I stop, I say, no, mommy and daddy love you, but they're lying. That's not true. See, adults lie too. We don't arrest little boys and girls. I don't think the message you want to send is that I'm your parent, I love you, I've been with you your whole life, but you're not listening to me, we'll go see the police, they're going to arrest you because guess what? That's reinforcing the message. When you see the police, when we get called, run and take off. And so I think, you know, while I've heard the many anecdotal stories about police officers chasing people here, there, and everywhere, if even 10% of those stories were true, we could have a track team instead of a police department. I don't want to feed the false narrative, but it's just not what we do. We don't have the staff to do it. We don't have the interest to do it. It just doesn't make sense. It's dangerous for the police as well as the people to have us separated, and it's not what goes on. So to say, let me bring my son and daughter in the station so you can put them in the cell and close the door and really scare them, I think they're smarter than that. I think my 11-year-old son is smarter than that. And all of your kids out there that are at this age are smarter than that too. But do you want to come in and talk to us? Do you want to bring them down? Do you want us to explain real consequences like Mary Ann did at the beginning, talk about the chapters and sections of the laws and the penalties that it covers and the trouble that you can get in as parents? Sure, we're happy to do that, but there won't be any inmates yelling at your sons or daughters to get us out of the joke.
Very good, thank you so much, Steve. And Mary Ann, there's a question that you could clarify that says, parents are not aware and/or they're not home, do they still have liability for what's going on in the home?
The short answer is no. So I read you the statute, the criminal statute, and if you're not aware, you don't have the intent. You cannot meet the intent of that statute. On the civil side, if you are completely unaware, if you have no reason to know, then you likely will not be held liable. But I hesitate to say that because we all need to be as obviously aware as we can be as parents in terms of what is going on in our home.
The child can still be held, right?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
That second house party they must have, yeah. And they were still held liable.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the child can be held liable if that child is hosting. But I think the question that was posed was if the parents are away and they have no way to know, then likely they will not be held liable. It's an issue of control.
Thank you very much. And just a couple of quick ones. I know it's late, but I think we have a captive audience. So, Sean and Allison, the question states, what role do the schools play in this issue? And I would preface that by saying I know that at our meetings, we've talked about some adjustments perhaps to curriculum or additional programs, but maybe you can tell the group tonight what curriculum is in place already and what programs are typically run.
Yeah, sure. Here at the high school, the 9th grade and 10th graders take a wellness course in one semester. In 9th grade and one semester in 10th grade can flip-flop between fall and spring. And in that course, they teach, and wellness is, if you think of it, for middle school parents or younger kids, wellness is really a course that's similar to like the combination of physical education and health, where they explore the impact of different things on their bodies, the exercise. They might study exercise and then do exercise and then study those things together in a synthesized way. They apply that thinking to drugs and alcohol. The first year, 9th grade Wellness 1, they do a lot of conversations around drugs and alcohol, but the drugs and alcohol primarily being marijuana, alcohol, and cigarettes, or tobacco, sorry. And then in the second version of that, they delve deeper into drugs that are a little bit more, or beyond the scope of marijuana, and they delve a little bit deeper into that. And so that's primarily the curricular side of it. And then every year we do some type of student programming. This year we had the assistant DA came out to do a program that was heavily interested in, it was called It Can Wait. They talked a lot about opiate abuse, but how the beginnings of that opiate abuse was really more garden variety, recreational usage of drugs and alcohol in a community similar to ours. And then we do parent programs like this as well. But this group here that we're here with tonight is really the most, I think, energized and the most cohesive unit we've ever had in developing programming just for adults, but also looking to bring along for kids. And then one last thing I'll leave you with is next year we already have our drug and alcohol speaker for the kids is Chris Herron, who's there's a 30 for 30 program on ESPN. He came out to the school 4 years ago. We've been waiting for the 4 years of kids to have cycled out so we can bring him back because he was really, really amazing. And so we already have him coming out for next year. We're really looking to build around programming like that to offer to kids.
I'll just follow up by saying one thing we're looking at shifting in terms of how we approach health education really is responsive to kind of current research about how kids learn. A lot of what we've discovered is kids don't make bad choices because they lack information. They make bad choices because they don't have strategies. They haven't figured out and practiced what they're going to do in a situation. And the reality is when you're in a situation and you're 14 or 15 or 16 years old, the most compelling thing in that situation is your friends and your peer group. And it's very hard in the case of that if you haven't practiced, if you don't have an exit strategy, and if you haven't figured out ahead of time how to manage that, what to do. So a lot of the shifting that's going on currently in terms of how we approach health education is not just sort of kind of repeating information over and over again. It's actually having kids explore apps that you can put on your phone that are about like a safe and kind of discreet way to contact mom if you're in a party situation and you need an out and you don't want to tell people. It's really about kind of upping the ante in their communication skills and helping them learn to make decisions in tough situations, because the reality is with adolescents, the moment that they're in developmentally, they're not aware of consequences, and they don't really think like we do quite yet. They're on their way, and they have other things about them that are truly wonderful. We're just working hard as educators to figure them out so we can do a better job preparing them.
Thank you very much. Sarah, if I can have you take the mic for a minute. There are a couple of questions about how do we be the parent who calls the other parents, and how do we help our kids understand that even a little alcohol is not the right thing to do. I don't know that you have that specific answer, but perhaps you could talk about programs that you can families that address those issues. And I would say that we are continuing to try to provide programming through Westwood Cares. And these are the types of things, especially we can't answer everything tonight, but we are going to use some of these as a guide as to what questions want to be answered and therefore deal with programming.
Sure, those are really great questions. I want to first just point out two important things. One is that anyone can always call Youth and Family Services for a consultation, a one-off appointment to follow up about any of these topics. We'd be happy to hear from you. Also, this is being filmed by WestCat and it will be made public, so if you have friends that couldn't make it, we can certainly share it and you can find it on their website, because I think it's really important. About the phone calls, I mean, you guys would have seen the survey that went out, and we just thankfully got this data collected. So just about 600 parents in Westwood that have middle school or high school age kids completed the survey, so thank you. This information is just invaluable. One of the important statistics is that we found that 90% of parents in Westwood want to be called when there's an issue going on, or they want to be called to confirm, hey, my son or daughter said that they were going to be at your house tonight, is that right? So that communication that Kathy was talking about is just on par with this survey. However, only 42% of Westwood parents that have middle school and high school students currently do call. So there's a big gap there. So if we can increase those numbers, if that's the only goal that we have, I think that would be huge. So I think Kathy's point of which side would you rather be on? Would you rather be the one that's regretful later, or that maybe feels a little awkward up front? I think awkward up front wins in that one. And then little alcohol being okay or not okay. Studies show that the longer that anyone can put off drinking, especially over 21 years of age, which is why there is a reason for that age, it is exponentially important to the success of not abusing or being dependent on substances later in life. So even that very small amount is just not worth it. And the brain, as we know, is still developing. We've talked a little bit about that. So any bit of alcohol hinders proper development. It's just crucial.
Thank you very much, Sarah. There are certainly other questions, but I think it's now 10:09, give or take, and we probably should wrap up. We ran a little bit late tonight. If anyone is interested again in asking questions that weren't answered tonight, I would say Youth and Family Services is the first place to go. Certainly, Principal Bevan and Principal Borges are amenable as the chief for any questions, and I presume Marianne for that matter. Anything that we can answer, we'll try to do. Some of these questions are unanswerable. But if we all work together and we communicate and we're strict about our policies with our kids and we make sure their friends and their parents are on the same page,